What up, homies? This is the God Theory Podcast. This is the place where we talk about God theories, the theories of gods. You'll notice that originally, and I haven't done it since, I'm too big on proper nouns. I need to stop. I think proper nouns are weird.
Mm.
Have you ever been like, when you say...
position to take.
I'm bold in my stances, David.
Yeah, go ahead. Why are they weird?
What if you say something like this, and you're like, who's running for the president? Who's running for president next year? Do you capitalize P?
No.
But
it's
why?
Not a proper noun.
But if you know it's president of the United States, it's implied. Why wouldn't it be? Right? Like, if you're thinking of the president, like if they understand what you're implying, and you anyway, whatever. The point is so we got up to an exciting start.
Yes, and that's why we capitalize G in God. It's grammatically correct, folks. I don't care how much of a rebellion you're doing against religion. Let's use good grammar in our rebellion.
I actually shat on JT a long time ago because he wouldn't capitalize G in God. Because I was like, well, the God they're talking about is the capital G.
It's a proper name. It's a stupid name. It's a dumb name for a God, naming him God. That's like naming president, but that's his fucking name. That's how they use it as a proper name, so you have to capitalize it.
Next dog I get, which will be another Corgi, of course, will be called Corgi. Like, come here, Corgi.
Capital C.
Yeah, capital C, exactly. Well, anyway, so
what I hate is when they capitalize pronouns, though, like his or him. You're like, dude, that's a pronoun that's not supposed to be capitalized. It's what the atheists do when they lowercase g your God. You hate that because it's bad grammar. Well, you hate it because you feel like it's disrespectful, but it's bad grammar. That's why you're justified in hating that. You cannot capitalize a pronoun. Stop. God doesn't get his own pronoun rules.
Don't they just go ham in general on nouns? Like the lamb, the light, his will.
His blood, and blood's capitalized. You're like, let's just capitalize everything. That's how holy God is. He gets free caps. He gets caps lock.
He gets caps lock. Divine wisdom. Yeah, why didn't they go ham and just go caps lock? They just did the first letter.
Like, God! You're shouting. And even they think, they're like, well, that's too ham. That's too devoted.
Oh, man, yeah. They're like, what? Well, we need to listen to his divine wisdom.
Divine wisdom!
Yeah, I think that's how they say it anyway in Southern Baptist.
I do like that, yeah.
So we just made an official change to the church.
And to our podcast. It's now called the God Theory Podcast.
It's like John Cena.
God! Yeah.
Which, if you haven't heard that prank call, people, which I imagine all of our audience has, you need to go listen.
The band where I teach, they do like random little like riffs off of songs during football games and stuff. Like if they score like bum 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 bum, just enough to not get hit by copyright law.
Yeah.
Well, they've started just to troll like the other team. Like whenever they do something, they go dun 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 dun. They like the John Cena like Spanish horns thing in the back of that prank call. It's so bad. So bad.
Oh man, I appreciate that. That's a funny thing about the internet. It's kind of unified us across ages. Like before, back in the day, I would have no idea what that meant. But right now on the internet, I was talking to someone, and this is like a Twitch chat thing. I don't expect anyone to know about this. It doesn't matter. The point is, this is a weird corner of the internet. But it didn't matter what age people were. We'd be like, "Oh, feels bad, man," which is like it's a GIF basically, or not GIF. It's a
meme.
Yeah, it's a meme. It's like that little weird toad face. It's like this. No one can see that on the podcast. Why am I doing that? It's a sad guy.
Sad face.
Yeah. So anyway, it's just funny that we don't know what age everyone is. It's like but that's not what this is about. It doesn't matter. The point is, this one's about a little bit of weirdness in again Mormons. I thought this was interesting. So obviously, you have no idea. Maybe you do. Do you understand what's like interesting about Mormonism and what's not?
Yeah. Well, I don't know what's interesting to an outsider. I know why I'm fascinated by it because it's weird that I was in a cult, and it's interesting to see how those mind tricks worked on me.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes I'm like, whoa, is this weird for you guys? Like, I linked recently that Brother Jake video about like explaining why missionary work was totally normal and not a cult brainwashing thing. And for those of you who haven't seen Brother Jake, he's an ex-Mormon who argues like a Mormon apologist. So he'll just say everything with like no self-awareness on his YouTube channel. That's like his gimmick. So he's like, yeah, see, we're not racist. We're not racist at all. And it's a big explanation that's super racist.
Yeah. He's like, we value black people. We value them enough not to let them go on missions or whatever.
Yeah, and the best part is, like, if you've been in the church, you've heard those lines spoken without the irony, like just sincerely. So if you've ever argued with the Mormon apologist, he's not even making up things. He's just quoting what they're saying and just giving it more context so you see how stupid it is. It's great.
Right.
So, yeah, that's what got us thinking about Mormon missionaries and how weird that is.
Well, the cool thing is, so I went to the church for probably about 3 years. I went pretty ham on it, man. I went to
you and ham. That's how we met.
Yeah. And then I think we told that story. Okay, I won't go into it. But I went to a seminary, like in the mornings. The only ones I didn't go to was so in the morning. I don't know if most people know. I think most people
who are familiar with Christianity know seminary as kind of like Bible college, like it's a place where you stay to become a preacher. Mm-hmm. But the Mormon version of seminary is like the 6 a.m. bullshit, where before high school you go to this church building and have like an extra class that you don't get credit for. That's about the Bible or the Book of Mormon or whatever they're reading.
Oh, it's so early. And here was the worst part for me coming as an outsider. There's no coffee.
David? Oh yeah, no coffee. You gotta just be awake. But energy drinks are fine. God's cool with those, even though they're worse for you
for whatever reason. Yeah. But yeah, it was horrible. And the car that we rode in, we got a ride from Adam Fox's sister Miranda, and it was a bug with no floor. So this cold air would just shoot in, because I don't know if you know anything about cold air, but it sinks. So it's and the aerodynamics, shoots into that hole, and we were back there freezing. This is what I put up with for like 3 years. Mormons are weird, but anyway. That's interesting, right? But one thing that I didn't know about you, it's always interesting that I run into things occasionally where I'm like, you'll say something and I'm like, that's a thing, David? And you're like, oh, that's totally a thing. And so we ran across this article. Is this a good time to introduce it?
Yeah, this is a cracked article. It's a couple years old, but it just hit my radar because, I don't know, Mormon stuff hits my radar because those are the kind of groups I'm in.
Yeah, and the title of it is, so if you're not familiar with crack.com, you need to be. It's hilarious. Site of like comedians, would you say?
Yeah, comedians. Yeah, I would say so. Internet. They call them the number one or only source of comedy on the internet. So there's like hyperbole, but they're hilarious. Like we are the world's only comedy webpage. Like that's clearly not true, but it's hilarious that they would claim it.
Yeah, they've got a weird sense of humor, but some of it's pretty normal. And they make lists. A lot of them are lists, like the top 5 most ridiculous horror movies or whatever.
Yeah, so, 5 huge celebrities with insane secret backstories.
Yeah. And so this one is 5 hardcore realities of my time as a Mormon missionary. The author is Robert Evans and Daryl Reed.
And this comes from a series they do called Personal Experiences, where they just invite people from different weird walks of life. Like, my time as a carny. Like, what's it like being a carny? So it's just kind of essays people write about stuff that's their own lived experience and not everyone necessarily has gone through. They're usually pretty cool.
Yeah. Like the most recent one I read was, it was like 5 or 8 most insane serial killers that never got caught or that are still large, is how they put it. And, me being into mass murder suicides as a research interest, I was like, I got to read this. And it was, there was like 2 things in there I never heard of. So very cool. So, it's not, it's journalism. So it's not always 100%, but so you'll have to fact check these as we go through.
Although these are, because of it's personal experiences, so they're anecdotes, but I can definitely, I'll weigh in on my own anecdotes from these because a lot of these are ringing true for me.
All right. So number 5, being a Mormon missionary, it can be surprisingly dangerous.
Yes. It's amazing more of them don't die. In fact, and this is so fucked up in retrospect. One of the things that we would tell ourselves is like, the church must be true because look how few Mormon missionaries die. Like a bunch of 18-year-old, 19-year-olds dropped in the middle of like Zimbabwe, and only like 3 or 4 of them die a year. Like that's amazing. Like there should be way more deaths. Like that was a faith-affirming thing, is that only a few missionaries die every year.
Wait, these are Mormons saying this?
Yeah, that's what I would say to myself as a Mormon, and what we would say to each other is like, man, that just shows you it's true, because like you drop a bunch of 19-year-old Americans in Peru in the mean streets and ghettos, like it's amazing more of them don't get stabbed or robbed or kidnapped.
Man, this place that our church put us, it's super dangerous. Can you believe that we're not all dying at a greater rate?
Yeah, it's God's real, man. God's works in mysterious ways.
Your missionary track now, they can be anywhere, right? Is it all over the world?
Everywhere that they're allowed, so they can't go to China or North Korea, places like that. But anywhere that will let them come in, and some places where they're not really technically supposed to be there, but they do some legal loopholes and get there anyway, they'll go. So almost every country.
Wow, okay. And you did yours in a loop around Belgium
and France, yeah. And you would think Belgium and France, pretty safe places, right?
Well, do they always do they always put you in places So this is given by divine revelation, right?
Yeah, so the way it happens is, and they cover this a little bit on the video, but missions that are, it's a numbers thing, right? You're there for 2 years. So as people are leaving, they need people to replace them. So then an apostle or a high-ranking general authority prays about it and then feels inspired to send you to one of those places that just so happen to need a missionary that week.
Okay.
And that's God working in mysterious ways again, because he planned it that way, where when you send in your papers, the timing worked out to where you had to go. Like, you literally think that God is sending you to that place because that's where he needed you specifically and individually to be.
Oh, so you thought like, wow, okay, so it's like backwards logic. You thought you took French classes because you were prepared already. You were being prepared for it.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
No, I thought that I went to France because I took French classes. I thought that factored in, but I thought the reason I was taking French classes was because I was destined, or
yeah,
plan was for me to go to France or Belgium.
Now, was there any indication before? So here's what's baffling. Like, a lot of people, I've met so many smart people. You're not one of them, but most other people who
I'm pretty dumb. I can't pretend to be a smart person on any episode where we talk about Mormonism, because I was in it for a long time.
Well, that's my point, is that it's funny that intelligent people can get duped. Like, go read a guy named Alvin Plantinga, right? He's this Christian apologist, one of the only ones I respect, which I know that sounds like a misnomer. Impossibility, right? Logical impossibility. But he writes good stuff, and he seems to be pretty honest, and he takes the most liberal version of Christianity because he realizes he's fucked.
Yeah. So nothing else is sustainable.
Yeah, and he even says, he calls it a theodicy rather than a theographical defense. But it's like, oh, it's as long as it's possible, it can be true, and therefore I believe it's true, right?
That's weird.
Right. So yeah, he says, like, you can't prove it's not possible. So he's fallen to the very least, but he writes like solid philosophy. So it's true that we can't prove 100% that it's not true. And so he plays in that area.
That 0.0001% of possibility.
Exactly. So there's intelligent people that can make this stuff work.
Yeah, and it's insidious the way it's designed to be a mind game. We talked about this on an earlier episode, but just it is designed, and they get, it's not like I converted to this as an adult. Like, most Mormons were raised in it, right? The ones that go on missions. There's a few that don't, but most of them have been in it for years. So, like, from the time you learn how to talk, you're soaking in this kind of soup of weirdness. So it doesn't feel weird anymore. It feels normal.
Yeah. So, it's like this willingness to be deceived, or it's really about the two pathways of which we process information. Do you remember me talking about that? Like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like there's the central route, they call it the central route, which I think is kind of a misnomer, because I think honestly the central route is the heuristic route. But
it's the route of least resistance for sure.
Exactly. But this was based on a model that's a little optimistic. Most of them now are on cognitive miser, which means like a miser is someone who's just kind of
like that takes less resources.
Exactly. Yeah. But this one's like, oh, well, it says it's central. It acknowledges that we use the other one more often, but it calls it central. Like that's the main one. When I think the main one is a heuristic, and it takes a little backflipping to stop and analyze things. But anyway, one, we take in and we don't challenge things. You just say use heuristics. So like that sounds right, or it's coming from someone I trust, or there's hundreds of heuristics, not hundreds. There's almost 100 heuristics, but the most famous ones are like representative availability, like these things we do based on, like you and I trust your judgment. So if you say something like, I just saw an article that said that psychology was bullshit. I'm just kidding. With that one, I would be like, oh, I trust you, but I've also got this other heuristic of it's consistent with previous information. Yeah. And so I'm like, oh, it can't be bullshit. But if you said something that didn't cause any problems, like you just said, hey, I heard McDonald's is bad for you. I wouldn't.
You wouldn't fact check me very much, because you'd be like, oh, he probably sourced that.
Yeah. And so, I think that's kind of what's going on here. People can willingly push it to that kind of heuristic route and say, I don't want to think about it critically. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway,
also, again, it's a lot of it is to do with being a goldfish in the water bowl. You're not necessarily aware that you're in the water until you can get out.
Yeah. And
so I think a lot of it just feels normal because it's all you know. It's the same reason people, like Amish kids, until their room spring, they're probably not like, oh, it's kind of weird how we dress like it's like we're time travelers. That's a weird thing that we do. until they go out into the world and go, oh man, that's super weird actually.
Well, it's a lot like the idea of privilege. Like, I don't like that term, but I like the concept of the fact. I don't like the term because you mentioned one time that words can be weaponized. And I don't like that it's weaponized sometimes to kind of whip people over the head. I prefer like a term that talks about the fact that, yeah, we're just really well. I mean, like Louis C.K. put it this way. If I could re-roll life, like if I got a second chance at life, I'd re-roll white every time because
that's my rule of thumb for privileges. If like you had the choice to be born again in a different race or sexual orientation or whatever gender, would you?
And you wanted easy mode?
Yeah.
He was like, I'm picking it because this is the easiest. Not in the future. We're going to get booked for all this. But
right now and any time in the past?
Yeah, I mean, you
apply going to the past? Yeah.
Like, yeah, so that was his way to, like, make people be honest. Some people are like, I don't know. And it's like, really, buddy? You have to know you've got it easy. But that's, like, the same thing. I didn't realize it until you talk to someone, you know, any minority of any group. And then they're kind of like, oh, well, did you know that even when I speak my native language, people will be like, learn English. And I'm like,
people don't be like, oh, where are you from?
Yeah.
From America. Well, where's your family from?
And you're like, they're from America too, you dick.
From America too, you dick, like smiling the whole time.
Yeah, because how do you do that? But it's the same sort of thing. Like, you don't know until you kind of take a second to look outside of the box, and that takes some motivation. So anyway, speaking of looking outside the box, you were stuck in Mormonism. You were stuck in a missionary. So number 4 is your sin. Wait,
number 5. We need to talk about how dangerous it is.
Dangerous, yeah. Go ahead. Now you went to Belgium, Brussels, France, and so you'd think it'd be safe, but
right. But here's the thing about Mormon missionaries is that we're taught that the rich and the affluent. There's all kinds of stories in the Book of Mormon of them rejecting God, or in the Bible, right? Like the rich people don't need God. It's easier for a rich person to go through the eye of a needle, or a camel go through the eye of a needle, than a rich person to get to heaven. Yeah. The idea is, and this is pretty sound demographically, is that rich people don't need God because have you heard about? There's a theory called the what is it called? Basic needs something or other. Where the idea is that when you have your basic needs taken care of, you're less likely to be religious.
Yeah.
So this holds true with rich people. Like if your life is going pretty well, and a couple idiots knock on your door telling you about Jesus, you're not so desperate that you're willing to. Same reason you're not buying lottery tickets, right? Like you're not so desperate as to need, like, well, maybe there is a Mormon American Jesus who will get me out of my things. It's a long shot, but what have I got to lose? Like that's not in your head. You're just like, go away, I'm fine.
Yeah.
So the dangerous part of that. And this is not even counting like people who went to Mexico or like, you know, Mexico City's got a huge murder rate. That's where my brother served his mission, right? I was in a pretty safe place, but we're taught to go looking for the poor, the people who are in trouble, the people who are living, you know, in shelters or in homeless places, people where they're going to be open to the message because they've been humbled by life circumstances, right? And demographically, how would you predict the crime rates to be in those areas?
Not pretty high.
Not very welcoming.
Let me ask you a question about that. Was there ever a time when they're telling you about the needy in life circumstances that you were kind of like, this feels a little shitty, and you suppressed it?
Yeah, a couple times. Okay. And this might just be false memories I've given myself later, but I really feel like there were times where I was like, it feels a little exploitive though, but you're right. They do need Jesus more than anyone else, so I guess it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I sometimes find it hard to live with myself if I don't at least create memories of myself feeling bad about that. So that might not be true, but I feel like it was.
Yeah. So you're in poor neighborhoods with crime.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you 2 stories I don't think I've told you before, because it felt like bitching. Because while I was doing this, you were in Iraq, right? This was our timeline. And so I won't be like, Jeremiah,
I'm in danger.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I was in danger. Just not as much as like you, but again, you don't think you're supposed to be in danger when you're signing up to be a missionary in Belgium. So it's something that people don't always think about. Story 1, we're in an area and we're knocking on doors, which is already kind of dangerous just because people don't like to be bothered in their homes. And there's this kind of like protect your castle rule in a lot of places where you can pretty much just murder anyone that sets foot on your property.
Yeah.
Now, Belgium's not like that. In fact, guns are very rare. So we open the door, and I get a bad feeling about something. Something's not right. And I think it's
a bad feeling about that.
Yeah, I've got a bad feeling about this. I think it's the spirit warning me that there's danger, but I'm the junior companion. They always go in pairs, right? And there's a senior and junior. Whoever's been out there longer is usually the senior, and he calls the shots, and you're just kind of like backing his play.
You're the DAC.
Yeah.
Luke
I'm the
Skywalker.
deck, or I'm the bottom to his top. However you want to, do it.
Why?
We'll go with Dak. Sure, why not? So I'm feeling bad, but I'm like, okay, whatever. And this woman comes out, and she's clearly off her meds or something. There's something unhinged about her, right? There's something a little bit off. Like it feels like she's just not quite seeing things that are there. And she's like, yeah, and this is all happening in French, and I'm new, so I'm just trying to follow. But from what I can make out, she's saying like, yeah, oh, yes, God told me you were coming. Please come in. And I'm like, that's weird. Okay, this might be a weird thing, but also maybe it's good because maybe God, you hear these stories about God like working on people, and then missionaries find them and they baptize them, and it's a happy ending. And you're desperate for baptisms if you're in Europe. You just want someone to listen to because, like I said, prosperous countries don't give two fucks about Jesus, right? That's why they're prosperous. No, it's not why they're prosperous, but it is a side effect. Yeah. So she comes in, and then she starts rambling about like her son who's dead, and he's still speaking to her. And there's just these things that you're like, what is happening right now? And I'm getting like 70% of just bits and chunks because again, my French isn't that good right now, and she's kind of rambling and cutting herself off. It's really weird. And then she goes upstairs, and she comes back downstairs with a gun.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and if
you gotta have guns in Brussels.
No, that's what's weird. Like, you're not supposed to have guns. Like, they're highly illegal, or you have to go through a ton of paperwork. Like, you can, but it's really hard to get one. Like, the system's set up to where people like her aren't supposed to have guns. That's the whole point of all the background checks and things you have to do. So, and she starts waving it around, and I'm like, that can't be real. That's like a replica or something, or it's weird. And yeah, we got out of there pretty quickly, but we had to do it in a way that didn't set her off because I don't know. I was pretty scared. I thought I might die.
Yep. Yeah.
But we ended up getting out of there. Second story, we're walking again in a poor neighborhood, and one thing about Brussels, Belgium is there's a lot of immigrants there because they have a pretty open immigration policy. And I don't want to start a whole thing about immigrants or criminals and all that stuff because we have Trump for that. We don't need our podcast to back them up. But this you got to put yourself back in time. This is 2002. And it's the anniversary of September 11th, 2001. And we've just invaded Iraq. So tensions are high among the Muslim population and against Americans. And there's a lot of... Go ahead.
And to be fair, Muslim extremists exist. I don't think anybody thinks that that's not true. It's just that labeling all immigrants as extremists is a little ridiculous.
Right. And that wasn't a label I had because they were all children of God. Like, you have a very charitable view of humanity when you're a missionary because that's what you're fed, right?
Yeah. So
I don't think, and this is why Mormon missions are so dangerous, and I'll get more into this later, but I think a big part of it is the fact that you feel like there's literal angels walking to your left and right who are going to protect you, right? Oh. So you're doing things that a sane person wouldn't do because you think God's going to back you up.
Dude, I can't even imagine lying to my kids that way. Like, if I was like, hey, don't worry, walk to school in Mississippi where people drunk drive all the time. Don't worry, walking along the highway. You've got literally two angels. I just can't even.
Yeah, it's criminally irresponsible, but that's literally what we're told. We're shown pictures of it. We're told stories, like faith-promoting stories. So you go out there convinced that if you're righteous and you're living the commandments and you're following the rule book, which we talked about a little bit, God will protect you. You've got that promise from him. You're going to be fine. And if you do die, you're going to go straight to heaven anyway, but you probably won't because God's going to protect you. So we're going through a very Muslim kind of neighborhood, which is weird. I don't know why we were there. We might have been lost because we weren't supposed to proselyte to Muslims because they sometimes, I don't know why I'm laughing at this, is terrible, but they sometimes get murdered when they switch faiths, apostasy. Right. Their family back home will have them killed because even though Belgium is cool, like where they came from might not be that cool about switching religions. So we were told not to proselyte to them because it could put them in danger. But anyway, we were in that area and a bunch of youth, and you study violence and crime, like which demographic is more prone to random acts of violence for no reason? Disenfranchised 20-something unemployed men or literally any other demographic?
Yeah.
So it's a bunch of like 20-something unemployed men just hanging around with nothing to do. It's September 11th, 2002, which I didn't even think about at the time. I was like, oh, it's just a nice day. It's a Thursday or whatever. They start now. Mormon missionaries, they're good at branding, right? You see golden arches, you think McDonald's. You see two guys dressed like they came off the set of Mad Men riding on bikes.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, businessmen from the 1950s or Mormon missionaries. Those are my two options. So
which one were you?
They knew pretty quickly that we were Americans and probably Christian missionaries. So not like a popular group to be among that group, because again, they're super pissed because, and maybe justifiably so, we're bombing the shit out of Iraq where they're from, and they had nothing to do with 9/11. So, I can see their point of view now in retrospect, but did not justify their actions, which was to start yelling at us and throwing bottles at us until they like crashed around, to the point that I was like, we got to run. And so I started running with my companion, my mission companion, past their cars, because we figured they wouldn't throw them at their own cars. We just hoped that those were their cars. But then they start chasing after us. So we're booking it down the streets. They're chasing us, throwing glass bottles at our heads.
Oh my gosh.
And we only escaped because there was a subway station that I ran down, and we hopped on a subway, and it pulled out before they could get on it.
Wow.
Right. There's no way that would have ended well. Like, I don't want to be hyperbolic, and I know like other places have it worse, but even in Belgium, what the point of the story is, even in like a first world country with a low crime rate, Mormon missionaries are dangerous because we're stupid, we're naive, we don't know where we're not supposed to be, we don't know unsafe neighborhoods, and we don't care because we think we're going to be protected by divine grace.
Right. Yeah, that is like criminally negligent of your elders.
And it's a miracle that more of them don't die. But then again, they do die all the time. They just don't publicize that. Like, you rarely hear about it because the church doesn't want that on their front page. So they usually keep that pretty quiet. Like, since I've left the church and started following like non-church approved news sources, I see stories about missionaries getting hit by, just riding their bikes, getting hit by buses, because that's dangerous all the time. Yeah.
All right. So I'll look at this next one. I don't know why I minimized that. All right. So, you're sent off. Number 4, you're sent off to a mandatory, expensive Bible boot camp. I didn't know this even when you were like, I'm waiting for my letter or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You get some letter from. Yeah, I think that was it. Yeah. But you got to go to something called Mission Training Center, right? MTC.
Yeah, like as soon as you get your calling, it tells you where you're going to be going. You don't go straight to Belgium or Guam or Japan or wherever they're sending you. You go first to the MTC, which there's one in Provo, Utah, and they've got a few others now across the world, so you don't have to like fly to America and then fly to your next place if you're from Peru or someplace.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the architecture is very like 70s utilitarian communist block like buildings, like these cement block buildings. It's so soul crushing, and you're just in there 24/7. It's Bible boot camp. Like
that's boot camp. Yeah, I was going to say
10 hours a day studying the scriptures and learning your language. And you're there, if you're learning a language, it's for 9 weeks, and it feels like a long 9 weeks. Well, it depends on the language, right? If you're there for Chinese, you're there for even longer.
Hang on, boot camp is 9 weeks.
Oh, weird.
In Army. Yeah, exactly.
Weird. Yeah, I think Chinese is like 3 months, and if you're going English speaking, it's like 3 weeks. I was so jealous of those little fuckers getting out in 3 weeks. It's like prison. You're marking off the days. You probably know that from boot camp, how each day feels like it's stretching on forever, and you look and you're like, I still have 2 more weeks of this. Why?
And you probably couldn't call home either, could you?
No. In fact, you're not allowed to call home during the entire mission except on Mother's Day and Christmas, because it would distract you from your calling.
How?
All you're allowed to do, and this is so cultish, you're allowed to send an email once a week to your family, but not to your friends. You can write snail mail letters to your friends once a week, and you can call your mother on Mother's Day and Christmas.
What the hell? Okay, so I was in an actual, not a spiritual battle, but a real battle, and I was able to call. Like we had little shacks.
Oh,
like,
they weren't worried about distracting you from your mission?
Bases. No, yeah, they even ordered like satellite internet whenever you could sit down somewhere.
It's like they're trying to control us more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, you're paying for this, right? It costs you money. You're paying, I think it's $12,000, $20,000 somewhere in that year to go on a mission. So you're paying for the privilege of being put through this. And while you're in the training center, you cannot read anything from the outside. You can't talk to the opposite sex alone. Like there's girls there too, the sister missionaries, but you can't fraternize with them. Plus they're old, right? Like you're 19 and they're 21. So whoa, big age gap. But yeah, it's crazy. In fact, I remember my companion, my mission, because you get a mission companion in the MTC as well. You're never alone. That's one thing about a mission. You're never alone, except when you're pooping or taking a shower. Someone's right there watching you. Speaking of control, but
and being at war, it's the same thing. You got a battle buddy everywhere.
You got a battle buddy all the time. So he got sick, and we had to go to a hospital, a doctor's office outside the MTC, and that was like Christmas and Hanukkah and every holiday all at once for me, because I was in the outside world again. Like it'd been 4 weeks since I had seen or heard anything that wasn't church related, and just even a poster or a movie poster. It was just like, whoa, this is the world. People are dressing normally. Like people were wearing shorts because it was like, it wasn't summer, but people were just wearing normal clothes. Like it was so weird. I remember like that was the highlight of my 9 weeks, was just that one trip. And we just walked down the street. It was literally down the block from where we were, but we just got to walk there, go to a doctor's office, come back out. I to this day, that was one of my best memories of that experience.
Oh, I remember that,
one day.
From actual Army. Yeah.
Yeah. Weird how many overlaps there are and how much lower the stakes are here.
Yeah, what the hell?
It's almost unjustified.
Yeah, I did that in the military too. Even eating like outside food.
Oh yeah, you're like, oh, McDonald's? Are you kidding me?
Number 3, Mormon missionaries operate off of a memorized script. I've kind of noticed this myself. I still let missionaries come over and talk to them. And I'm like, yeah, I know this next part, right? This is Moroni's promise, literally, because this is the second time we met or whatever it is. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah, I know this. And then you promise it's true, except I've done it already. And they're like, yeah, what happened? I was like, nothing. They're like, did you keep trying? I was like, yeah. And then he goes, this last time, he goes, well, you have to ask with an open heart. And I was like, hey, I was in the church for 3 years with an open heart. Never happened. Not a single word back. And then he was like, and you could tell the young ones from the other ones. The young one was like this slow turn of like, oh shit.
What's the correct answer here?
Yeah, like we know he's wrong, but why is he wrong? That's like the thought process. And the other guy was like, well, I mean, I'm not going to say you didn't, but it is a promise straight from God. And I was like,
was the other guy Matthew McConaughey?
Yeah. Hey, I'll tell you what, man.
Hey, all right. We all have our own journey.
When you got washboard abs, you can never be wrong.
That's true. That's the truth.
But, it felt scripted.
Yeah, and it is. It's super scripted. Now, what we're taught is to build on common beliefs. So the first thing they're going to do is kind of ask you what you think. Like most people, we believe in God. What's your conception of God? And then from there, you kind of find a point where you're like, yes, that's how we do it, except it's this way. And there's a script. It's like my complaint about StarCraft, how there's like a branching path, and here's the right answer to every situation. You just have to memorize the whole flow chart. That's what being a missionary is. You just got to memorize the flow chart and know what's next. And, you trust the Spirit, so you might go somewhere different. But here's what you're never going to do. You're never going to start off by saying, hey, yeah, Joseph Smith had sex with a 14-year-old girl and had 30-something wives. We banned blacks from being part of the priesthood for a long time. There were polygamists. We massacred a whole bunch of settlers going through Utah. That was fun. In 1978, God finally changed his mind about black people. Like, we don't lead off with that stuff, or even stuff like that's not even that secret, like tithing or giving up coffee. Like, there's this progression of lessons that you kind of build up to those things, and you never tell them the weird stuff.
Yeah. Well, that was all pretty weird, David.
Yeah.
Like having sex with tiny girls, people.
Like, you're not going to get that in the Mormon message. Like, yeah, his wife didn't like it, but she was the maid. And then Joseph was like, I just had a revelation and said it was cool. So you need to stop complaining or God's going to destroy you. Like,
they were saying, here's the weird, or saying all that, and then being like, and then there's some weird stuff.
No, that's the weird stuff they don't start off with. But even stuff like tithing or the word of wisdom, which they will eventually get to, that's like 5 visits in. That's after you've been seeing them like every week for a month before we finally work that in. And by that point, by the way, we've already committed you to be baptized, because that's the second thing you do on your second visit, or the first if you can, but you're definitely supposed to do it by the second visit. Get them to give you a verbal commitment that you'll be baptized.
Well, I don't know how you kept a straight face at all that while you played GoldenEye, because Klob, it's like the central planet that like God apparently lives on. No,
Kolob is named after Kevin Lobb, one of the producers. But yeah, Kolob, and actually Kobol is in Battlestar Galactica, which was written by Mormon. It's one of like the main plot elements is they're trying to find the secret planet Kobol, named after Kolob, which is actually the star. It's like the system, right? The solar system. Yeah. The Kolob is the name of the star, and God's on the planet that's circling it. It's weird. It's some sci-fi bullshit. But yeah, we don't go into that because it's weird, and we know on some level that sci-fi bullshit, and it's going to turn people off. So we're like, yeah, they'll find out about that once they've been in the church long enough, and then they'll be ready for it. In fact, we have a saying called milk before meat, right? You give them the milk before they're ready for the meat. You can't give them the meat first. That would kill a baby.
Or it means a little bit of foreplay in the shirt before you.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Second and a half base before third.
Yeah, second and a half. And it sounds like they know that, and hence is why they give you a script, because there's some weird shit.
Yeah. And we talked about the Preach My Gospel manual. Well, that's the script. If you want to read the Mormon script, just read that. That's what the missionaries are working off of.
And the interesting thing is, if you ever like talk to like an apologetic, a Christian apologetic, especially like an early one, they constantly try to re-rail you. They're like, so you're basically saying this, and I'm like, yeah. And they're like, well, that's the argument from evil, and here's the answer. And I'm like, why do you keep railroading me
there's
into
some answers, and so you try and get them to be like, oh, and they call it resolving your concerns, right? Like they're like, oh, they have a concern, but they might not know what that concern is yet. They haven't verbalized it yet, so you have to help them find out what the concern is. Then you can resolve it for them, and it happens to be one of the 20 concerns you've already learned how to resolve, so that's fine. Just make sure they get to one of those 20.
Right. Yeah. There's never been an original thought idea.
Yeah.
Bullshit. All right. So number 2, we've got more snitches than a mob movie.
Yes.
So there's a lot of people
in Mormonism in general
talking about it. We're in the information age. I imagine this is a real problem, though.
Yeah. In fact, what actually prompted me to finally get my name off the records and not just stop going to church like you would do in any other church, was somebody snitched. Somebody they were planning on changing the handbook of instructions, which is only supposed to be for bishops to read and stake presidents, and they leaked it where it said that the policy change was that children of gay parents could not be baptized until they were 18, and then they had to renounce their gay parents' lifestyle before they would be baptized. And to me, I was like, all right, that's enough. That's my last straw. We're getting out of this. I don't want my descendants to be like, oh yeah, and grandpa was in a hate organization for a long time, but he couldn't be bothered to get his name off the books.
Oh man, I need to get my name off the books. Or I think I'm an inactive or something.
Yeah, but you're still in their records. They're counting. When they say 14 million members, one of those 14 million is Jeremiah.
Well, yeah, lay it on thick, David. Thanks.
Just trying to help motivate you. But so the snitches thing, this is actually funny because BYU Idaho recently put out a video about this, and you're going to be so offended by the metaphor. Have we talked about that?
No.
All right. So Mormons love like parables or stories that mean something else, right?
Yeah.
Because Jesus loved parables, so it's a perfect way of teaching. There's no better way of teaching than with stupid stories that mean other things. And so they start off this video with like a wounded soldier, like World War II era looking soldier. And he's leaning against a tree. And he's clutching his wound. It's like, don't leave your wounded soldier on the battlefield. Go back for him. Pull him out. He needs your help more than ever. And you're like, where are they going with this? I'll tell you where they're going with this. In BYU, Idaho, there's a very strict honor code policy. You think you can get kicked out of school for cheating, all the normal stuff, but also, drinking beer, having sex with a girl, masturbation, pornography. And so this was a pornography/masturbation metaphor in that if you are walking, because then they pull it out. I'm not just like extrapolating. They pull it out. They're like, don't leave your wounded battle buddy on the sideline or on the field or whatever. And then they pull it out, and it's the same guy who played the soldier, the wounded soldier, but now he's in his room, and you can just see the glow of the television on him. And then like his roommate walks by and kind of notices and goes, oh, and then walks away, but doesn't say anything, right? Because that's none of his business. False. That is your business. If you don't report that to his bishop and get him the spiritual help he needs, then it's like leaving a soldier behind on the field. Now, tell me, as a veteran, how great is that parable for you?
I can't imagine that went over well with anyone, especially me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there were a lot of upset people because it was very much like, wait, so masturbating and then snitching on your roommate who masturbated is like saving a wounded man off the field of battle? That's really dismissive.
Holy shit. Hey, that's fucked up.
But you see how they spin it to where if you do the human thing and just say, oh, weird, dude, maybe close your door next time, because the dude had his door wide open. I don't know why that was a thing. But it's like doing the human thing and being like, that's probably none of my business, and then just shutting the door and walking on is painted as harming your friend because he needs your help. He just doesn't know it yet. And if you don't tell on him to the bishop, which, by the way, is going to get him kicked out of school probably if he can't stop doing it, it's now a selfish act on your part because you wanted to avoid an awkward conversation.
Wow. Seems a little hyperbolic.
Yeah.
Do you like soldiers? Yeah. Do you hate it when they get shot?
Well, I do hate that. That makes you sad.
Tell us when friend masturbates.
Okay. Wait, I guess that's related.
Yeah, okay.
You're going to have to walk me through the steps, though, because I'm still not seeing the connection.
Yeah.
But they talk about spiritual warfare and how if somebody's caught in remember we talked about addiction and pornography and how Christians really play that up as like a spiritual disease. And so if you don't get that person help, like it's like Satan has their soul. So you're on the cosmic sense, this is how they pitch it. You're actually failing your friend who's in this war against Satan here on earth, a war for souls. And so it makes sense in the context, but it's horribly offensive when you're like, yeah, but that's bullshit, and that's a horrible way to compare it.
Yeah.
So this is why there's so many snitches in Mormonism, because they've been tricked into thinking that they're doing it for the best interest of the person they're snitching on.
Oh yeah, I remember this. I remember that even in there. I remember our friend Garrett Chase, and then his family. They had some a couple people who decided to live, different ways, and they were constantly telling them. And then it happened with Danielle too, like my sister. She was,
constantly getting snitched.
Yeah, snitches. Snitches get stitches.
Get stitches.
Bitch.
But in this case, they get promotions in the Mormon hierarchy.
I know. I remember when Miranda Fox, the same girl, told on my sister for doing something. I don't even remember what it was. Went and told the bishop, and I was like, "How is that okay?" And she's like, "Well, I had to for spiritual warfare." Yeah. And I was like, "That's none of your business."
And that's not just her like being a shitty person and like lying to herself. Like she really thinks that if she had said nothing, like she would have felt guilty about that. She would have been like, "Oh man, when I get to heaven and Jeremiah's sister's not there, that's gonna be kind of on me because I could have helped her stop that." Yeah. Like it's insidious the way they take good intentions, and this is something religion does in general. It's one of my complaints about religion is they take good people and they make them into shitty people who are still trying to be good. Like it completely warps their sense of right and wrong.
There's a lot of movements that do that, but yeah,
it's true.
On that note, number 1, saving souls is a cynical numbers game. Now, This seemed a little weird because a lot of people, when they talk about Mormonism, they say, "Oh, those friendly guys, right? Those really nice people with the all the same haircuts, the cookie cutter build. They seem nice, though." Is it just disingenuous, or?
No, they really are nice. Mormons, I'll say, are really nice people. But again, they're nice, but they're completely wrong, and they're doing immoral things because they've been lied to by their organization. But the cynical numbers game, I can vouch for this specifically because they usually call to be mission presidents, like the actual older people who run the thing. They usually call CEOs businessmen. Like my first mission president was a CEO of Marriott, the hotel chain.
Yeah.
And my second one, he owned a cell phone company in California. They were both business people. And the messages I got from both of them were this: it's numbers. The more people you talk to, if you talk to 100 people, maybe one of them maybe 10 of them are going to listen to you. And out of that 10, maybe one of them are going to take all the discussions and get baptized. So if you want to baptize every month, you have to talk to 100 people every day, or whatever the number is. They'll set goals. They'll have people call you. You have a missionary hierarchy, right, where you have like the junior companion, the senior companion, above him's a district leader, above him's a zone leader. It's a very pyramidal structure that goes all the way to the mission president and his assistants. And there's a chain of command, just like, I don't know, what else has a chain of command?
No, just a few things really in a free society, but probably the military.
Yeah, that's weird. There's a lot of things like that where you're like, I was a zone leader, right? So that's pretty high up the chain of command. I would call down to a district leader, and he would call everyone in his district and get their numbers. By numbers, I mean, how many people did you talk to? How many people did you invite to be baptized? How many lessons did you teach? How many commitments did you give? How many new investigators do you have? How many old ones do you have? Like, all these things are carefully tracked, like any marketing firm would do. They've got big area books full of all that information of how often they've taught you, what they've asked you to do, when you committed to do what, and then you report it back up. And if your numbers aren't high, you get this pressure from your immediate superiors, because they have to report to their zone leader, has to report to the assistant to president, have to report to the mission president. So, the shit runs downhill, right? As they say in the military. And it's the same thing there. They don't want to get like shat on for having an unproductive district, so they're going to put more pressure on you. And then it's this whole big game, and the whole thing is about talk to as many people as you can, because that's how you get sales. I mean, baptisms. But it's exactly the same way in high pressure sales. Like, if you've ever been in a sales job where you have to call people, it's the same thing. You call enough people, maybe 1 out of 1,000 is going to buy your product, but in order to sell 10 products, you have to call 10,000 people. That's how the numbers work. And that's the exact same strategy they taught us in our little conferences. They're like, okay, if you want to do this, they chart it out. They're like, here's our number, 10,000. Here's how many people listen to you, 1,000. Here's how many people, all the way down. So if you want to baptize every month, this is what you have to do. Numbers. It's a cynical sales numbers game. And when I got out of the mission, guess who started trying to recruit me?
Sales?
Yeah. I remember I sold pest control door to door for about a month before I decided it was the worst month of my life, and I quit.
Wow.
Because they recruit heavily from missionaries, because they've been trained in these high pressure, high numbers sales techniques.
Man, That's super fucked up. I'm surprised they didn't go straight for the throat and like get some behavioral psychologist or something and say like, how can we make this like someone forced into belief?
Yeah.
I wonder if they
And
have.
they might have, because remember when we read that Preach My Gospel, they were using a lot of fucked up psychology techniques.
Yeah, like the intake.
Yeah, and the commitment pattern. Will you do this? Now write it down with your own hands so you feel like you own it more. Stuff like that. Like these little tiny tweaks you can do to modify behavior. It's fucked up. And you want to know what's more fucked up since I've been?
What?
It used to be they would recruit 19-year-old guys to do this and 21-year-old women. Now they've lowered the age to 18 years old. So right after high school, a lot of my students here at school they're telling me they're planning on going on a mission right after high school. Like, what do you think the motivation was for that revelation?
People had a year off and they left the church, or
yeah, you go to college for a year. Think how many people they lose during that year of like not living with their parents, not being forced to go to church, not being fed the party line, learning some critical thought, maybe taking philosophy 101 or a logic class. Like now, right after high school, you leave your parents' house and you literally go right into the mission field. There's no time to be on your own.
Ugh, that's fucked up. I knew there was like
years old, and just thinking of 18-year-olds out there doing this kind of stuff, being tricked into high pressure sales, putting themselves at risk, all that stuff we just talked about. Like it sickens me, because the older I get, the more those seem like children. Like those are children walking around out there. They're legally adults, but just barely. Like if you were like, hey David, meet my new girlfriend, I'm like, dude, she's 18. Yeah, so what? She's an adult. I'd still think you were kind of creepy, right? Because it's a child to us. Like in our perspective, as in our 30s. That feels really young, and to put all that on them, to put them in suits and stick them out there as God's army, like that's like child soldiers on a much less horrifying scale, but still the same basic thing is wrong.
Yeah, and then they have really no option. Then, well, they have, okay, so it has to do with our other podcast when we talked about strategy, but you have virtually no option than to go to a place where you're going to make a lot of friends because you don't have any right now, and then you go to what? Probably BYU. So yeah, more indoctrination.
Yeah, and they've made no secret about this, because we know even as missionaries that the average member doesn't stay in the church very long. Like the retention is a really hard problem. A lot of converts will join because they like the personality of the missionaries. They're having fun while they're around. They're like, yeah, sure, I'll get baptized. It'll make you happy. And then after 2 or 3 years, they stop going. That sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So retention is really low. In fact, 25% of converts actually stay in the church after 5 years, which means, like, look at my mission. I baptized 7 people in 2 years, and 25% of them are probably still going to church. That means for 2 years of my life, what's the math on that, Mr. Numbers?
Well, yeah, like 1 to 2, right?
1 or 2 people are probably still going to church. Now, that's not a very viable economic system if the point is to get members by converts, right?
Yeah.
Now, where do you think most Mormons come from? Conversions?
I'm guessing births.
Yeah, Mormon families, they're like Catholics, right? Like I have 4 brothers and sisters, and I'm a pretty average size. 5 kids is pretty average for a Mormon family. They're birthing their way. So what's the point of missionary work then?
Wow, yeah, indoctrination.
Yeah, and they've made no secret of that. And they would tell us all the time, especially in low baptizing missions like Europe, they would say, hey, you know what? The real convert of a mission is you. We're out to train future leaders and make you better members of the church. Like they don't even hide it. It's an indoctrination process more than anything.
So fucked up.
Super fucked up. And then when you consider that's not costing them a single dime because all those kids are paying for it themselves out of their own pocket, or more likely their parents' pocket.
Yeah.
Like this is just free brainwashing. That it's like, you ever watch that Scientology documentary and you're like, why would people pay to go be slaves on a cruise for L. Ron Hubbard?
Yeah.
I asked that question too, and then I was like, oh yeah, because I paid to be a slave for 2 years for, Thomas S. Monson or Gordon B. Hinckley or whoever was in charge.
This is why I thought that most people start being cool. We talked about the evolution of a non-believer, I think, in one of our early episodes, and I thought most people might start being moderate and then go towards vehemency. Mm-hmm. But some people think that you start being like an activist and you chill the fuck out. But I kind of think that, at least for me, I changed and I was like, everyone just get along, come on. But then you see shit like this and that just pisses you off. You're like,
yeah, the deeper you dig down that rabbit hole, the more you realize how fucked up Wonderland is, and you really want to just tear it down instead of just live and let live.
Right.
But yeah, I'm the same way. Like, especially just looking back, I'm like, the fuck? I spent 2 years. Like, at least I was able to learn a foreign language. Like, I speak French now because of that experience. But what a horrible way to learn a language, right?
Yeah, right.
Like, there are way better ways to pick up French. It's not exactly like a rare language to learn. You could find other ways to learn it besides be a brainwashed cult member.
Yeah, like spending that same money on like a 2-month trip and just get immersed.
And just live in Paris. And actually, the one thing that I've always hated about missions is that you're in a bubble. Even though you're in the culture, you're kind of kept aloof from it because you're always with your companion. You're always around Americans. You don't get to go to movies or like art galleries or anything except that maybe once a week for your preparation day. That's right. You get 1 day a week where for half the day you get to do all your laundry and shopping and all those other things. The rest of it is literally 10 hours a day. No. You leave the house. You wake up at 6. You leave the house by 9. You get back by 8:30, and you're supposed to be out that whole time proselytizing, whatever the word is, tracting.
Wow, cheapest labor.
Yeah, they work you like slaves, again, like Scientology, which I used to make fun of, but now I'm like, oh, that was me as well. And it's just everything I learn about. I'm like, what a terrible, terrible thing. Like, I could have immersed myself in French culture, could have drank the wine, talked about philosophy, read novels. You're not allowed to read anything but 6 books. You're allowed to read the Bible, the Book of Mormon, the Doctrine and Covenants, and then there's 3 church-produced things. One's about church history, one's about the Articles of Faith, one's about Jesus. They're just written by church people, so you're allowed to read them. That's all you get to read. 2 years, 6 books. I read the Book of Mormon 7 times that year just because I had nothing else to read and nothing else to do. You can't watch TV, you can't watch movies, you can't listen to music. It's very controlling. There are way better ways to learn a language is what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fucked up. That's like legit fucked up.
Yeah, and I'm not even exaggerating. Like, any ex-Mormon listeners, feel free to share your stories. I'm sure that people had it worse in, third world countries where there's actually I've heard stories about missionaries getting sick from dysentery because they didn't boil the water properly. Or they get tapeworms. My brother got worms on his mission. He came home with parasites. He was sickly because of food poisoning and just the conditions. Because it's not just like, oh, you went to Mexico, it must have been awful. Because people live good lives in Mexico. It depends how much money you have. They're living off of nothing. They're in the poor areas. They're in tenements, they're in ghettos, like they're super cheap because the church is cutting costs, right? They're trying to save as much money as they can. They're like, oh, you'll be fine in this stupid, shitty apartment that's full of roaches. And it becomes a mark of honor when you come home to share how shitty, how many roaches you had or how much the water leaked over your bed or whatever, because it's like, oh, you really suffered for your faith. Good job. If you go home early, you're scorned, you're shunned because everybody knows when you're coming home, right? Because you're not allowed to talk to them for 2 years. That tends to be a number that people keep track of. And so if I come home and I'm walking around after a year out, like, it's going to be weird and awkward because the assumption is I had sex with a girl or was gay or whatever, some shameful thing. And yes, having sex with a girl and also being gay are considered shameful things in that community when you're a missionary. So yeah, there's so many social pressures. Like, it's all kinds of fucked. I wonder if there are any Mormon psychologists, because I can't see how you could be one in good faith and like still know what you know about human behavior.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, that went to a secular college. Yeah.
Yeah.
So imagine ones that went to like BYU. They were like, oh, right. Jesus, but also brains. But this is why our brains.
Find a way to compartmentalize it.
Yeah. But yeah, it's crazy. Well, like many of our episodes, I feel light and fluffy afterwards.
Yeah, it's fucked up, but I survived it. So yay.
Yeah, so did I.
And I don't want to play it off like a victim because, people have. I'm not a victim here. This is just something that happened to me, and I got over it. It's fine, but it is fucked up for people going into it. I feel so bad about these kids, like telling me they're putting in their mission papers. I'm like, oh, you're so excited right now. You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I am okay with them being crumbling down. I'm glad that they're losing popularity. Say they're growing, but I'm like, that's only because you're literally taking in anyone and you make it so hard to get out of it.
Yeah, like everyone that has ever been there is on the record. So yeah, you're growing because Jeremiah and my converts and everyone else that ever got baptized, unless you go through a lot of legal loopholes and paperwork, you're still on the books. So congratulations, fastest growing church.
Get fucked.
Yeah, get fucked.
On that note, well, thanks a lot for listening to us this week. Hopefully you learned something about Mormonism. I almost always do. And it's a weird, fun topic. And it makes good coffee talk, I guess, depending on your crowd.
Yeah, it's
But
weird. I would like to talk to people from we talked to a Pentecostal once. I'd love to have a Scientologist on or anybody who's just been in a weird, like, religion's always weird, right? Like, you have a Jewish zombie who walks on water and a rib woman and a clay man. Like, it's just super weird. Any mythology is weird from the
yeah,
outside. But some are even weird. Like, Mormonism takes all the weird and then it says, also, Jesus came to America once. Like, they just up the notch on weirdness. So I love hearing about other places where it's just like, it's religion, so it's weird, but it's super weird, even
it's
by
like
religious standards.
it's like the Oregon Trail of the original scriptures. Makes a whole new
Right.
trip, and
Exactly.
new adventures, but kills a bunch of natives. So, all right, we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us, and yeah, tune in for next week. If you have any feedback, you can send it to the God Theory Podcast at gmail.com or on our Twitter, which is twitter.com/God Theory Pod. You can also come to our page, which is a closed page. People won't know you're on there, no matter what you post or what's being posted, unless you sign onto your account and see it somehow. But yeah, it's facebook.com/groups/God Theory Pod. We post some things up there that are of interest, and there's usually a pretty decent discussion. So yeah, join us there. So if that's it, then we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for listening.